He's
Hello,
back.
everybody. We're back. It's the Presence Posse, and we are presenting Presence and Control today. We are Bobby Cobb, Dr. Fred Blum, and I'm Miriam Segal, and we're here to hopefully bring some insight and, well, all cool presence stuff. So I'm going to
That's
get
the
Bobby.
goal.
That's the goal. Well, actually, do we even have goals of the Presence Posse?
Goals are, I mean, they rhyme with control. So,
Well, that's true. Oh,
hey,
good
well,
start, Fred.
that's-
Good start. You guys both have stories to tell about control or seeming control. Who wants to go first, or do you just want to kind of talk to each other? What would you like to do?
Bobby, why don't you go
Oh,
for it? Because yours is fresh.
yes, I am in the mood for self-confessing.
Mm.
So I'm happy to begin to share my story of actually it's not so much of control completely, but it kind of goes back to what we can control. We're a little bit late today due to me. I have recently invested an absurd amount of money in some really wonderful tech that I am discovering is completely over my head and my current desire to educate myself. And it reminded me, we started when we were backstage, we started with the wisdom that a lot of YouTube people share, that the best system is the one that you'll use, and it's the one that you like and the one that you're in harmony with. And I'm here on my iPad with $1,000 worth of tech equipment in the other room because this is what I can use. So, seems like an apropos thing to begin the conversation off with, I guess.
Well, similar tech issues. Last week, now, well, in weeks leading up to that, I had set up a webinar on LinkedIn, and I had something like 75 people actually register for it, which seemed like a lot to me. And it was literally like, and I actually blocked out like 4 hours beforehand, to be get ready and have everything set up. And like my wife and we started finding just one thing after another, like big crises that had to be solved in just a few hours leading up to this thing. I don't know. I'm not really an astrology person, but it turns out that was the beginning of Mercury in retrograde last Wednesday, which everybody says is like a tech thing, right? And I'm like, well, if I ever needed proof, this would be proof. But it's like, there was nothing to do but just keep letting go in those moments, because people are coming, and it's like you have to do your best. And so there's that fine line in control, and it's really like that beautiful serenity prayer. I think it's often associated with Alcoholics Anonymous and groups like that, but is, God, grant me the serenity, and we could fill in the presence, right? To accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's very like that alone. If we just had that as our underlying life principle, or if I did, I'll speak for myself, I think life would be a lot smoother. You know, the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one.
that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of people, is the wisdom to know the difference. I was in an interesting conversation with a client this morning who sent me, let me see if I don't have it handy, sent me a nice little meme that was all about, it was really all about control, that if we have a true heartfelt desire to make things better, and that's not necessarily something that people would associate with being in control, but to the degree that we're constantly sorting for things that we would like to see different than the way that the world is showing up, to that degree we're saying, if I was in control, I would do it this way, and I believe that would be better. And she happens to be a very spiritual and religious person. So responding back to her in a frame that I hope would make sense to her, which thankfully it did, I just asked, what would happen if we made our way through life absent the belief that things needed to be made better, or that I had the ability to make things better? And the last little thing that I added to her, um, kind of because I just knew it was like a little bit of additional leverage in the way that she thought, I just asked the question, isn't it kind of the height of arrogance to assume that we can improve on God's handiwork? And for her, that led to a very interesting shift where all of a sudden, a lot of things for her that she had been struggling with all weekend just kind of seemed to fall in place. It's almost like what I imagine the conversation between the Pope and Galileo, if there actually ever was one, where Galileo just said, I know this is the teaching, but if we do it this way, the math just works. Everything just falls into place. And that was sort of the realization that she had. And personally, I've noticed that myself. When I'm at my most frustrated, it's because things are not going according to the divine Bobby plan. But the moment that I surrender to the divine Mother Nature or presence or divine or God's plan, whichever way that shows up for us, I personally find things just tend to fall a little bit more into place than when we're wrestling.
Miriam, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, me. All right. So from a different perspective, from my own direct experience, so what I call the which is the nothing from which everything is created. And I mean, whatever you want to call that, that's what I call it. Some people might call it God. And the going from nothing to something. So whatever is created, we are created. And we are creators. Then I can effectively create whatever I want as far as my own experience goes. So whether I want to, I mean, I've used that kind of analogy, like for just even humoristically with some people, it's like, oh, okay, so you're God, right? And then they go, okay, and then they kind of let go of that they're trying to control everything, trying to fix everything. But another side of it is, what if you are? What if you actually are God? Because in that is also, so as the creator, I don't have to fight to control anything. I don't have to protest anything. I can create a different thought. I can choose the same thought. I can create a different experience. I can choose the experience I'm having now. It's all created by me, so whatever I want to create. And there's an incredible freedom in that, knowing that from nothing, I create something, and it can be anything I want. I can think anything. So why hang on to a thought that I find uncomfortable, distasteful, unhelpful, whatever word you want to use, when I can create another thought? And I can test that one and find out what that feels like. So it's a similar idea from a different perspective. It is that instead of fighting to gain control, it's knowing that you actually have it. It's just not what you think. And you can think something else.
Okay, now I'm going to go meta to that. Not because it's necessarily even useful or practical, just because it might be interesting. So starting from the idea, the frame that this is all there is, right? This moment, constantly changing and evolving, is it. that the past and the future can only occur inside of now. We all kind of get this idea. So what is this future that I'm trying to create that doesn't exist, right? Where was the past where I made a decision to change something in this future, right? It's all happening now. And so the thought that I had and the assessment that I didn't like it and the decision to change it all happened at the exact same moment, which kind of is a little mind-blowing. But somehow it's all unfolding, and the decision to change it or the decision not to change it, or the being unconscious to it is all just happening and unfolding in some way that, at one level, like at the level you're describing, Miriam, and Bobby too, in his way, we do have some agency and we do have some control. And then at this other sort of more meta level, it's just happening, and even the thought to change it just happened. And there is no one here that can make a decision to change anything. So it just depends. And that's not useful per se. And it can actually fall into things like narcissism or nihilism, which is like, who cares? None of it's real kind of thing, which can be very unuseful. But it can be valuable in the sense that if we can really even have a moment or a glimpse of that sort of ultimate unfolding, just like you were saying, Miriam, from nothing, it all just arises from nothing. We get a glimpse of something that instills or more reveals the peace that is already here. And the peace then sort of dissolves the need to change anything. The peace sort of reveals that we were in the present the whole time, which is a little bit like, in a way, a shortcut, because the more truly present and at peace, add all these adjective type of words to it that I am, the less I need to change anything. And at the same time, my ability to change just from an unattachment standpoint is actually very high, because I can clearly observe the thought process and I can clearly then, choose different thoughts because there's just so little going on up there. So, just another perspective, really. All of them I think are valid from whatever context we're looking from.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's the context or perspective. I would actually even, in certain instances, looking at from a meta perspective or a meta perspective, there's no evolution because there's only now.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever just happened it doesn't exist. And whatever might happen, it doesn't exist either. So there's no evolution. It's just right now. Anything we imagine that is imagination, and anything we imagine that might be is also imagination. So it's one way of being in the world is being as now as possible. And then we don't have that. And yet, in the moment, there is an open field, an open playing field, if you will, where we can choose what we want in that moment if we want to choose anything, or we can just, well, it's not it's there is nothing. So there's nothing or there's something, and that's a choice. That's just, okay, it's there and it's not there. Yeah, and it's actually that simple.
That's simple, you say.
Well, if I hadn't had the experience again and again and again and again of the simplicity of it, and it happens
Right.
like that, I wouldn't say that. But because
Yeah.
I have the direct experience of it and I have it, well, many times I can say, again, those moments don't exist. I will say that it is immediate. It is either here or not here. It exists or it doesn't. Put it however words you want to use. There's nothing and there's something. And it is quite simple, unless I choose to make it complicated by resisting. And when I notice
consciously or
resistance, it
unconsciously.
disappears like right the second I notice it. Yes, Bobby, you were saying?
I said consciously or unconsciously when you make that decision that sometimes we are manufacturing things unconsciously. You guys have both used the word perspective in your last little things. And Fred, as you were going through the meta version of what we've been saying, I was reminded of Michael Beckwith's four phases of, I think he calls them the four phases of spiritual development, where you're the victim, the creator. Well, those are my
Creator's
terms,
third. I
actually.
use that framework a lot, but it's victim. The second one's kind of like the doer or the achiever, I call
Yeah.
it. And
And
the
I
creator.
call it the creator, but that's, yeah. And then I call the next one the artist. So I've renamed
Okay.
them. But like thinking of those from as a perspective, I mean, I'm often in times when I'm in the perspective that I'm a master of the universe, and anything that I say or do, I can manifest. And it seems like at times it's like that. But there are other times that it, like 5 minutes before this call, it just seemed like the world was aligned against me and foiling every attempt I was making to get on here. So I just breathed and said, okay, do you want to be on or not? Yes, I do. What do you do next? And it kind of came. But I've been just mentally playing around with the idea that these are all valid perspectives, but the rules of the way, or not the rules, that's too stringent of a word, but the ways that we interact with the moment will change based on our current perspective. And
Mhm.
I don't even know if that makes sense. I'm kind of speaking. I feel like I'm getting into some new ideas, kind of in the moment, and speaking them out loud. But does what I'm saying make sense? I guess not.
I would,
Go ahead, Fred.
I was saying I wanted to hear a little bit more because I was almost there.
um, well, if you are in the master of the universe perspective, the mantra for that is, if it is to be, it is up to me. And that
Mhm.
that is a very specific energy and very useful in certain parts of our lives, but very unhelpful in other parts of our lives. And like what I was describing was more that, just almost like a Sufi poet might getting lost in the beauty and the divinity of the moment and being so filled with the moment that nothing else mattered. And if your goal is to be in that energy, the pathway seems to be, to me, removing all of the obstacles that are keeping you from being there. Because as
Mhm.
we have all said on this podcast, it is actually what is. And then we build a lot of stuff on top of that. We superimpose our egoic superstructure on top of the reality that is. But, that's like being divinely lost and drunken in the beauty of the moment. That's a perspective that, if your goal is to do a podcast, that may not be the best energy to be in, or it could be the perfect energy to be in, depending on the context.
Yeah, my perspective on that, and I look at that as four quadrants. The victim, the achiever, the creator, and the sage is what I call them. And my main function, my main work with clients is helping them transition from that quadrant to master of the universe. I can do anything I put my mind to. Uh, hard work, discipline, operating system, basically, what I call force, into an operating system based on flow, which is quadrant 3, which is the creator. Quadrant 2 says life happens by me, or I make life happen, you know? And quadrant 3 says life happens through me. So I used to use the term co-creator, but I just like creator better. Sounds a little less woo-woo, but the idea is that we in quadrant 3 we do play a role. We still believe that we have some agency, because quadrant 4, I am life. We've kind of given up on that illusion, and um, we, generally speaking, if you want to live in quadrant 4 as just the enlightenment itself, it's good to have people to kind of help you with the day to day of whatever it means, for you to continue, if you're going to be a teacher or whatever. And there may be, I bet there are stories of people that, in fact, I know there are, like, from India, stories of people that have profound awakenings and then just go back to work. But I think that would be challenging, maybe, to do that, to engage that deeply in what really just appears to be an illusion. But again, that isn't my focus. My focus is quadrant 3, like Jesus talked about, to be in the world, but not of the world, which is what I see quadrant 3 is. We're engaging in this world. We're paying taxes, taking care of our bodies, having relationships, all that very much in the world stuff. And yet having a very deep knowing that who we really are is not of this world, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And the knowing of that, and again, the knowing, like, in here rather than just like a concept, well, then that knowing permeates everything else in our lives. So even when we're paying our taxes, or, exercising, or being in relationship, there's a peacefulness that's never very far away. Sometimes it's not right there in the present, at least speaking for myself, but I know that it's not like I don't have to, go off to a monastery or something to find it again. It's there. I know it's there. And even if I forget it, which I certainly do, I can remember it again. And so that's what I think quadrant 3 is. We're in the world, but we know that we're really not of this world, that our true nature is something beyond that. Quadrant 1 is the victim. That's just not a lot of fun. That's, like, I'm hopeless and I'm helpless and I'm blaming and I'm complaining. And it's a challenging operating system to come from.
Kind of like being at the mercy of everything and everybody.
Mm.
Yeah.
I from my own direct experience, I will say, and I mean, to me, sometimes words are, we don't have them, or at least I don't have them. So I make choices based on, well, this is the closest I can get at the time until something else shows up that seems to work better, or we make up a new word. So when I talk about from the perspective of the it's actually an incorrect way to put it. And I don't have anything else. I don't have anything better. So better to call it that. So we're all we're all created from the nothing, from which everything is created, and we are constantly creating. So it's always nothing to
Are,
some.
are you saying Omni, OMNI?
The
UN, right?
yeah, UN, so the
Like
nothing,
uncoach.
like
Okay.
uncoach, yeah. So the
It's very
and
Stranger Things.
beg pardon.
It's very Stranger Things, that Netflix show. They have a name for that ultimate dimension. It's something
Oh,
like that.
okay. I just call it the because it came to me
I love it.
that was the thing I could call it. It's the not who I am, because there's no such thing. It's what. So it's nothing. When I don't have a body, so I use I. When there is no body, there is the And then there's a body. And then there's an attachment to the body. And then there's no body. There's or a detachment from the body. And then there's a body. So there's attachment, detachment. The un is always what I am. And from the un, everything is created. So I, or the un me, whatever, decide. It's not possible because it doesn't exist. The un doesn't have human experiences, human emotions, human words. None of that stuff is there. It is nothing, absolutely nothing, until there's density, until there's a creation. And the creation can be a thought, an idea, a feeling, a body, a rock, whatever. There is nothing, and then there's something. And the moment there's something, there is something. And then there's some kind of interaction, and some people call it consciousness, whatever you want to call it, from the perspective of the un. So using those words because I haven't found anything better. There's nothing, and then there's something. In that something, there's an experience. Without something, there's no experience. There's nothing. The moment there's experience from the perspective of the un, it doesn't matter what it is. There's no such thing as good experience, bad experience, right experience, wrong experience, better experience, worse experience. It is pure experience or it's nothing. And from the experience, it's because there would be no experience without this. Without all of this, there is no experience. There's nothing. So the invitation, to use that word, the human experience, whatever you want to call it, is the experience of the experience. And that it's all experience. So it's all excitement. It's all amazing. It doesn't matter what it is. Even pain, even excruciating pain, is still an experience. And then, as you guys use creator in a different way than I do, so it's from the un of nothing to something. Okay, create something else. Detach from that, create something else, and attach to that. That's when I use perspective, that's how I use it. It's from nothing to something. The minute there's something, doesn't matter what it is, there's an excitement, because this wouldn't be happening. There would not be an experience. So yeah, if that made any sense to you guys at all.
If we take it back to control, control is about attachment to or resisting experience, trying to make it. And, like there's nothing wrong. Like what you're saying is if we're not attached, like it's very true. Like, an experience is going to create a feeling for me, or even my thoughts about the experience are going to create a feeling for me. And that thought it's either going to feel good or it's not going to feel good. And that's about as reliable a yardstick, barometer, as anything to decide, do I want to keep creating this experience? I mean, obviously there can be caveats, right? What's this?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was like, which experience? Because it's interesting when I hear you say, I have a thought or a feeling or whatever, and either I want it or I don't, or it feels good or it doesn't feel good. It's like, what's creating the doesn't feel good? So before choosing, I want this experience, I don't want the experience. Which experience don't you want? The one where you're creating the pain yourself because you're resisting what's there? Or the
Exactly.
one that's, yeah.
Yeah, or maybe I'm creating the pain intentionally, i.e., going to the gym or something. So, it's not as simple as feels good, doesn't feel good, but it's still a barometer that can be useful. If I get into an argument with my wife and I notice, like, if I can pause for a moment and I can like relax my ego for a moment long enough to know that this feels constricted and tense, and I don't want to feel that way with her. then I now have the opportunity because I've gotten present with my experience in the moment. And now you're only at a choice point when you're in the present, you know? So now I can, do whatever it takes, including again, the discomfort of, my ego is going to interpret letting go of that control as uncomfortable. So again, I don't know if it's as good a barometer when you start looking at all the different nuances, but Bobby looks like he's got something. So I want to hear what you have to say.
I want to hear
I
Bobby too.
love so much what both
He's
of you are saying,
bursting.
and I can hear so much truth in what both of you are saying. In my own way of doing this, I like to explore a relationship. I like to understand what that emotion is attempting to tell me. So we get an instant feeling. Does something feel good? Does something feel bad? And sometimes that can be enough to guide us. Do I want tea or coffee? I'm really jamming with coffee this morning. I'm going with coffee, and that's an effortless thing. But sometimes, like particularly with frustration and anger, I find in my own exploration that is often the emotion my body uses to get my attention because it knows that it will reliably make me stop. Now, this is something that I'm making up in my head to rationalize my experience that may or may not be true. But sometimes, like if I'm really frustrated, I'll just do, actually, Fred, what I do is a simple version of your technique, which I can't remember what you call it, but I've renamed it the bliss technique.
I like your
For
name better than any name that I used.
And I sit with that emotion and say, okay, frustration, you have my attention now. What is it that you want me to see that I'm not seeing? And sometimes nothing comes back, but sometimes with just a breath or two, it will be, you can't do that because you need to do this. And it's like the moment that little insight hits, that thing that I talked about earlier of everything just seeming to fall into place. And I have deep experience of both of the things that you guys are talking about. And sometimes, not always. I mean, this is not like a ritual or anything, but sometimes it gets my attention in such a way that the next best thing to do is to pause, which that's been the hardest thing for me to decondition myself of, because I think my training as a financial advisor, I felt like I always had to have an opinion at the top of my head, and it needed to be well thought out, and I needed to express it in a convincing way. And, developing that is a skill, has benefits, but it also has huge disadvantages that, I got really good at doing something so well that I could do it unconsciously. And now I'm finding that I'm having to bring it back into consciousness, look at this process that I've created and deconstruct it. Because for me, at this stage of all of the stuff that I'm doing, the answers I find are in my own conditioning, that it's something that I learned to believe along the way that was useful for a very long period of time, long enough for it to become a completely unconscious behavior that I could fire off like an algorithm just because I've thought about it. But that pause of saying, what is it? Anxiousness that has now got my attention that you want me to notice. And I don't always do it. And it's an answer doesn't always come back, but very, very frequently, a little aha moment that just lines up everything in a perfect row. It's almost like that nice adjustment that a chiropractor can get in a neck, Fred, that like everything's back in alignment. And the client, when they experience that, it's like, oh, it's been restored. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think that this is that little exercise can be a psychological version of the chiropractic adjustment.
Attitude adjustment. No, I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Well,
How does that hit you guys? I mean, I'm obviously layering something on top of the processes that are already working for you, but to me, it almost felt like you guys were kind of looking at different sides of the same coin. And I feel like that little technique, when it arises, kind of shows you it's a coin and you guys are just looking at both sides.
and it's good to be able to do that, to be able to look at either side of the coin, depending on, what side is going to best serve the moment, really. Uh, it- y- you know, it- the best I can do sometimes is to realize that this is all like, I like to think of it as a game, honestly. That once I have really seen that my happiness, my freedom, my peace is not dependent on really anything that happens out there. Um, whether it's a relationship, my business, whatever it might be, all those things that I want to control um, from my quadrant two self, Um, once I realized that that control is kind of an illusion, but also that I don't have to really control them because the like my well-being is already taken care of. It's already present if I can just look there. Then life becomes a game. Then I can pretty much make up what winning and losing looks like. So then, I could just follow whatever instinct feels right to me. If I want to go make $1 million, that's awesome. I can go do that. If I want to go save the whales, I can go do that. And there's not really a right or a wrong choice, as Miriam was saying. It's just kind of, playing the world game while knowing that truly what is most fundamental to who I am is already taken care of. And there's nothing that can take that away from me. I can forget it, but I can't ever lose it. Byron Katie just tells endless stories like that, of being in what most people would consider really dire or serious circumstances, and just being unable to feel anything but joy. So I think that's available to us.
It absolutely is available. It, as I understand, I create. There's no reason to fight my own creation. Or a creation is, there's no reason to fight the creation. If I do, uh, then I can choose to not fight. So when I hear you talking, Bobby, about, okay, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling anger, I think you mentioned anger. And then it's like, okay, so I'm creating anger. What else do I want to create instead? I don't need to go, like, I can, I mean, anybody can go into the, what is this anger trying to tell me? And then what's on the other side of anger? To me, that's kind of like a ping pong game. And it's useful somewhat, and otherwise
Sometimes.
not. Yeah, because it keeps me in the ping pong. It's like when I talk about when people talk about problems. I have a problem, I have to solve the problem. Well, as long as you're trying to solve a problem, you're keeping the problem alive. You have this problem, you have to solve the problem, and it's back and forth in this ping pong game. What if you just don't create that? What if you don't consider that you even have a problem, because you don't? You're just creating a situation and then resisting. What if you don't resist it? So the anger can be a direction, and it can be a direction as far as, I'm feeling anger, I'm creating this anger. Do I want to create this anger? Do I want to keep creating this anger? Is this useful for me? It's like, okay, I don't have to feel angry. And in my experience, the moment I was like, I don't have to create this at all, and it disappears right then and there. It's just gone, completely gone, because I'm the one creating it all. It's nothing to something. Although, I mean, at some times I do the, okay, this anger is coming in connection with this thing or this memory or whatever I want to call it, right? So I can choose to learn something or not. And I am then giving myself the experience of learning something or giving myself the experience of making meaning out of anger. I'm giving myself all of that experience, or I'm experiencing the experience that is there. I get to choose. I get to create it all or just not. Not. And it's a split second of it's there, it's not there. It's there, it's not there. But the ping pong game, back and forth, problem solution, problem solution. Oh, there's anger because this is the thing. It's like, this is not anything that I'm not creating. So I can
Yeah,
stop
that's the
creating it.
bottom line.
Yeah.
And I love the distinction. I can create or I cannot create. Uh, like if you want to be just in oneness and not create, that's definitely, I mean, it's an option. It's not always easy to, I mean, people spend their whole lives trying to find that point, but it is a choice nonetheless that exists. Uh, and I think there is a lot of power in recognizing I created this, not like blame, not like, just like a reality. And yes, it takes a lot of um, courage, really, to accept that responsibility, maybe for someone, especially if they're like in quadrant one in that victim mode.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there is a point when we can say, yes, I am the creator of this reality. And then there is even a point where we could surrender even that, maybe, and say, it's just reality that's happening. And the existence of a creator is even itself a creation, it's like, and then, so maybe, like I always say, I love the expression, God looking out through 8 billion pairs of eyes, whatever the number of people there are. And so, there's God having an experience of a Miriam as creator, and sort of endowing the Miriam with, or the Fred or the Bobby, with the experience of that ability to create as God, experiencing himself through Miriam. Uh, so I think that we are creators. I'm not questioning anything you're saying. Uh, as as an independent individual being operating through this world, I think it's very powerful to acknowledge myself as a creator. And then at some point, I think even that gets surrendered. But that might be what quadrant 4 is, right? Is that there is no creator, there is just creation.
That's
Just my
my, that's my, well, again the words, because my experience of the there's no experience in because is nothing. It's like
correct.
there is just absolutely nothing. And
Mhm.
most people can't fathom what that even is, because immediately we are human. That's our human brain wants to, yeah, but what's it made of? It's like, no, it's nothing. It's really nothing. And then all of a sudden there's something. So the easiest way I've found so far to speak of it is as there's nothing, there's something, and once there's something, it's like it's been created, right? Even though the has no language. Like, it's really interesting, the Bible, for example, when it says, let there be light, or in the beginning there was the word, and it's like, no, there wasn't. There's no language, there's nothing, and then there's something. And the moment there's something, that's the experience. So the which is nothing, anything can be created. If you think about when you were a kid and you went out to play, you just had this big open space of, I can do anything, right? So I'm going to be, I don't know, a kangaroo. And then I'm going to suddenly hop around like a kangaroo. It's like, okay, where'd the idea to be a kangaroo come from? Nowhere, right? Or whatever you want to call it. But then
Mhm.
you just sort of have the experience or give yourself the experience of kangarooing until you don't want a kangaroo anymore. And then you do something else, or mom goes, come in and have dinner or whatever. It's like when there's this huge open playing field and you can do whatever you want with it, it's like, okay, we create the experience of the kangaroo from nothing. That's kind of an analogy. And there's no, generally speaking, if we leave it sort of without judgments, without, um, I'm trying to think of the word in English and I can't think of it, but with, okay, without anything, there's nothing wrong with, like, oh, we don't all of a sudden go, oh, I shouldn't have chosen to be a kangaroo. I should have chosen to be a lion, right? It was just like, okay, I just came up with kangaroo in the moment and I was a kangaroo until I felt like being a lion, right? So there's no resistance until resistance is created. And then there's the experience of resistance. And then it's like, okay, do I want to keep creating that or do I want to not? And let it go. And it can, again, my experience is it just disappears. And there's nothing. There's just well, it's all but I mean the nothingness. That's the words that I can use. And
Hmm.
the even the eternal, there's a body, there's no body. There's a body, there's no body. And having the experience, the direct experience of I have never died, I will never die. There is no such thing. It's just and then there's a body, and then there's attachment, a life, and then there isn't. It's all, it is or it isn't. It's so easy. And it's, as you say, in a quadrant one, not necessarily. I love using your quadrants as you've explained them. It's like, oh, this is actually quite useful.
Yeah, I love it.
It's very
I love
useful.
your quadrants too,
Well,
Fred.
they're not mine, but they are
Well,
useful.
yeah, they're
For reference,
yeah,
they can be
but
quite
it
useful.
is
Yeah.
it's useful to you to phrase this in the quadrant. That's new. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
the quadrants aren't
it,
new, but looking at identity and the different perspectives of identity through the
the,
quadrant.
they're just they have so much application. Like we can look at it like how to solve a problem, or we could look at it like an existential map, and it's equally useful in both cases.
Absolutely.
Until, until it becomes a thing, like other things are things. And it's like, no,
Well,
I
then that's
don't detach
attachment
that
again,
anymore. Yeah.
right?
It's like I can detach from that and be in the unattachment. That is no longer useful. As we talk about sometimes in the posse, the usefulness and not usefulness, or helpful and not helpful, or less helpful. Yeah.
I'm a fan of whatever works. You know,
Me too.
yeah.
Although it's a kind of is it not the word, oh, sometimes I don't come up with the right word, but it's like works is kind of a no, it's not work at all.
I
But
mean,
you know what I,
yeah,
yeah, we, yeah.
works in this case is more just a metaphor for useful.
Yeah.
You know,
Or delivering results.
yeah. Does it produce whatever it is that I wanted to produce? You know,
That's that NLP uses that. Things are neither good nor bad, holy or evil, or anything else in NLP. They're either useful or not useful. And that's it just, from a point of view, that just makes it very clean and effortless, removes the judgment.
I think it's directly freaky sometimes how I can be sitting with an experience of something being challenging, or feeling like this is difficult, not being conscious of the resistance I'm creating in the moment, and then becoming conscious of the resistance that I'm creating, and then Do I have to resist? And the moment I recognize it, it's gone. And then the same thing, like a split second, like the moment it's just gone. And then it's a breeze. Whatever was so difficult, whatever was so challenging is so effortless. It's like I could
And,
go, it's, it's like nothing. It's amazing.
you know, I also like looking at this in terms of energy, um, and resistance, control is like bound energy. It's energy that's it's something that holds energy rather than allowing it to flow. And sometimes, I often talk about I like to do things through the body. Sometimes just meeting the experience exactly as it is very similar to what Miriam and Bobby's talking about it. Uh, that somehow when you just do that, and that's the moment. See, that choice to me of being able to say, do I want to keep resisting this? It's only available when we're fully present with our experience, you know? I'd like, at least that's, or you can let go of as much resistance as you're willing to be present with, so it's almost like it comes in whatever level. But when we fully meet that experience and are given that choice, maybe I don't need to keep resisting this. It liberates that energy. And that energy then we experience as clarity, as freedom, as, oh, I don't have to struggle so hard with this. Um, and it's just as obvious as Miriam keeps pointing to. But the funny part is it's never obvious until it's obvious, you know? Uh, and then it's always I like that phrase, a blinding flash of the obvious, It's like until I can see it, I can't, it's like not even a thing. And the moment you see it, it's like, you know, there it was all the time. Uh, but that's the hilarious part about this thing is how easy it is to forget this. It's so easy to forget. And every time you remember, it's like, oh yeah, there's oxygen. I could have been breathing this whole time. Um, but until we see it, it's just not a thing. And I think that, that the journey, um, is to make it more and more obvious so that it's like we forget less.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like we talk sometimes about practicing the presence muscle or building our presence muscle.
Right.
It's like that. For me, also, I'm going to bring, because there can be people who might listen to this or maybe are listening to it right now, who do have experiences of what I call the un. So the
Mm.
unexperience then is everything is experience. So resistance is experience. It's exciting. Non-resistance is experience. It's exciting. Effortlessness is experience. It's exciting. It's all experience. And then there's the experience of the this and that. So resistance to this that I've created, both of them anyway. So whatever experience, and then whatever experience I'm resisting, which can become like what I spoke of earlier, is like this kind of ping pong game that you're going back and forth, and then we see that, okay, I'm resisting this, I don't know, do I really want to keep doing that? And then poof, and the whole thing disappears. In From the perspective of the all of that is experience. So there's nothing wrong with any of it. All it is experience. It's just resistance is experience. Whatever thing that is my experience of that thing is experience. So it's like being, as it's almost, if I'm going to compare, there's a quadrant and then there's not a quadrant. There's just pure nothing and something, if that makes any sense. And I wanted to mention that because sometimes when I hear examples, I'll be sitting with this is not my experience. My experience is that everything is experience. There's no resistance isn't bad. I want to stop resisting. It's just a matter of, do I want to keep doing that? Nah. But it's really cool when it just suddenly disappears. Like, wow, that's how easy it was. Great. Yeah. If that made any sense. But there may be somebody here who who is hearing that, it's like, oh yeah, because I've had that happen where people go, "You're talking about what I experienced." I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. What you're saying is also makes sense to me. Whereas other people might not have that experience that everything is exciting, everything is a creation, or nothing, or yeah. Bobby,
Hmm.
since you were kind of going, what do
I,
you
I
guys think and all of that, what's going on with you before we round off?
actually, this very much reminds me, the energy of this podcast reminds me of the first ones that we did 5 or 6 years ago, whenever that was. And I remember Malcolm, after we would get off the podcast, he would be like, Bobby Cobb, what in the world is going on to you? You were all like off in the distance. And like this is one and these have happened many, many times when I'm on the podcast, but I'm really like I'm listening. I'm just like so fascinated with this conversation and the way that it's interesting to me that it's we're all talking about the same thing. Normally, I kind of feel like we're describing different ways to climb the same mountaintop. But today it sort of feels like we're talking about different mountains, our experience on different mountains. So I really don't have a whole lot to add, to be honest with you, but I think the rest of my day might be spent thinking about these perspectives and what it is that we are creating actively and what are we creating subconsciously and what is a message and what is not. And it's just like when you started talking about the I thought the first time that you said it, the reason that I questioned it, I thought you said the om, like
Ah,
in yoga. And the yoga is like the unmanifest, the om in yoga is the unmanifest everything. And the waves on the ocean of consciousness are the vritti. And that's the bright, shiny object that distracts us from the beauty of our true, authentic self. And actually, what you have been saying in a lot of this, Miriam, reminds me of a lot of teachings like of the Vedanta Society and other people that are expressing that using more Eastern language than the Western language that we're using here. But I've really enjoyed this. This has been beautiful.
You reminded me of another Byron Katie story where when she first had that kind of big awakening, and with no real context for it, she wasn't like studying, spiritual practices or anything, but uh, people would hear about her as this wise woman, whatever. She had a reputation, and they would like come to her door. She'd answer her door in Arizona, and they'd say "Namaste," and she never heard this word before, and so she thought they were saying "no mistake." And she thought, oh, how wise. These are such wonderful people. They realize there can be no mistake because that's what she'd come to, is that realization. But yeah, I don't, they were all doing their yoga namaste.
ah.
Mm,
All
that's a
right,
beautiful thing.
gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our hour. Do you have anything you want people to know about? Start with you, Bobby.
I do. On the first Monday after the equinox, which, if my calendar is correct, I believe is March the 23rd, 3 weeks from today, I'm going to be re-releasing a program that I did a couple of years ago that's been updated called Spring into Mindfulness.
Mm,
It is a 30-day exploration of an experiment about inviting more mindfulness into your life. It's free. It's delivered by video. I email you a video each day. They tend to be 3 to 5 minutes on the short end. 10 to 12 on the long end. I think I've got 2 that go over 20 minutes, but mostly they are just quick things delivered over a long period of time that if you invite the practice in, it'll be amazing to see uh, how much things can change in 30 days of practicing something with a full degree of presence. So if you're interested in that, right now you can just send me a messenger thing and I will add you to the list. Hopefully later today or tomorrow, I'm going to have the landing page where you can just go and I'll have a link to that for the, and I'll place that in the Presence. So that's free. It's called Spring into Mindfulness.
Thank you, Bobby. Fred?
Well, I will be redoing this webinar, the one I mentioned earlier that was a comedy of errors, just this past a week ago, a week ago. And the webinar was and will continue to be titled Beyond Achievement, the Hidden Costs of Success. And it talks, much of like the kind of stuff we're talking about here, the idea that people often pursue success very aggressively from a quadrant 2 perspective, and they reach the limits of what the level of happiness and satisfaction that the ego alone can provide, which is largely what quadrant 2 is about to me. And so the talk will be about beginning to see that the operating system of quadrant 2 in contrast to the operating system of quadrant 3, and how we can begin to create more peace and well-being in our endeavors of business or whatever else we're up to. And I'll post it in the Facebook group when I think I have a new date set for a couple of weeks.
Excellent.
And how about you, Miriam?
Well, I have a couple of things. One of them is what I'm calling quiet mind. And basically focusing on if you have a busy brain, if your brain is getting in the way, so that you're not getting things done, or you're maybe imagining or writing, how you kind of write scripts of a different ending for a situation. You just rewrite the script and you never get finished rewriting the script. Whatever's going on, these mental loops that go on and on and on and on. I'm doing a 4-week program that I'm calling Quiet Mind. And I'll put some more information about that. Starting in about 2 weeks, I'll put some information about that in the group and on our page. And the other thing is a membership that I'll be having. There's a small monthly fee for that, where will also be sort of active workshops and master classes and that sort of thing, that I am calling the Identity Override. The Identity Override. I actually originally called it No Refuge Dojo, but it sounded so... Yeah, I did not.
Combat. Cobra Kai.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it can be useful. It just it fell into place more with an identity override. So I will put more information about that in the group and on the page.
Fun.
So we've all got some cool stuff coming up. So y'all, you got a lot to look forward to. And I will start it right away by thanking all of you who have been here, even if it's for a few seconds or if it's been for the whole show. And let us know if you've been watching the replay, #replay. You are welcome to ask questions, write comments, and we will follow up by responding, of course. We're not sure when the next talk's going to be and what it's going to be about, but we'll let you know on our page or in our group. So keep your eyes peeled for another episode of the Presence Posse Presents. And as always, my fellow posse partners, Bobby Cobb and Fred Blum, it is lovely to be with you, learning from you and sharing with you. Thanks for this time, as always, and I will see you hopefully again soon. And to all of you watching, hopefully see you again soon. I'm Miriam Segal, and bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.